Today I would really like to talk about the toxic effect of negative self-talk. So negative self-talk is when your inner critic takes over. So we all have an inner critic, and our inner critic can actually be really helpful sometimes. So it can say to us, look, the way you handled that situation maybe wasn't the best way. You could have maybe been more compassionate, or when you were doing this, you were maybe dismissive of someone, so it might be better to not do that. And sometimes our inner critic can be really helpful, but when our inner critic takes over and we really talk to ourselves in a very negative way, we tell ourselves we're not capable, we're not a good mum, we're not going to make it, we are going to fail. It really means that we can't be ourselves properly. We're actually criticising ourselves so much that we stop living our life and doing the things that we want to do because we are so critical of ourselves. And this is something that a lot of my clients do and I work with on a regular basis. So negative self-talk can make you feel stressed, it can make you feel really sad, and even lead to problematic mental health problems like depression. So what we're going to look at is how to change the harsh thoughts to more gentle ones and to help reduce the negative power of those thoughts. So if you can treat yourself more kindly, say like you would treat one of your friends, it's more easy to change the negative thoughts into more positive ones, and that's what I'm going to look at today. Your inner voice making critical, negative or punishing comments is what we class as negative self-talk. And it's about making judgmental decisions about yourself. It's about judging everything that you do and being very harsh. So that is something that I think would be very helpful to look at. Negative self-talk can create stress for us, but it can also cause stress for people around us. So if people we love talk to themselves in that way and are very negative about themselves, it can be really hurtful to see that, and it is very hard, not just for ourselves doing it to us, but when people see someone they love being very critical of themselves, that can be really difficult to see. So negative self-talk can sound like a critical parent or someone from your past who's been very negative towards you. Negative self-talk is an inner dialogue you have with yourself that maybe limits your ability to believe in yourself and your own abilities to reach your potential. Negative self-talk isn't just stressful, it can also make it difficult to get motivated and achieve your goals because you actually stop yourself from even trying before you've tried, because the negative self-talk gets in the way and tells you that actually you're not capable of this, so why even try? There's a lot of consequences of negative self-talk. There's a high risk of mental health problems like depression, generalised anxiety, PTSD, psychosis, and a lot of different anxiety disorders. It decreases motivation and makes you feel quite helpless. This can then lead to increased stress and lower ability to see opportunities and a decreased tendency to capitalise on those opportunities. So it basically stops you living. It stops you being able to think that you're capable. It stops you from trying to do things, and it really gets in the way. And this is something that a lot of the clients I work with have. The stress comes from the perception and the changes in your behaviour because of the negative self-talk. So when you do have positive self-talk, it's actually a great predictor of success. So it limits thinking, feelings of depression and relationship issues if you talk to yourself more positively. So minimising self-talk is really something that we have to look at. So when you are critical of yourself, if you can catch that inner critic, if you can say, wait a minute, I'm being really harsh on myself, that's not something that I want to do, that can be really helpful. Now, it does take time if you are someone who is very self-critical, but if you can stop yourself and take a step back when you do criticise yourself, it's a lot easier to then change that language and that narrative. And you have to remember that thoughts are not facts. So you might have a thought about yourself or even a thought about someone else. It doesn't mean it's factual. It just means that that thought is there. So that thought can be questioned. But when we do have a very strong inner critic, I think that people just go with it. They just allow that to happen, and they allow themselves to be very critical of themselves. And when that happens for a long period of time, it's very difficult to then challenge that inner critic. For some people, what helps is giving your inner critic a name. So it's easier to disagree when you think of your inner critic as a force outside yourself. So if you call your inner critic something, a name, or Debbie Downer or anything like that, something that you put a label on it, it makes it feel like that self-criticalness or that critical self-talk is actually someone else. It's something different. It's not coming from yourself. And if you can distance yourself from it a little bit, it's easier to then say, do you know what, that's not true. What I'm telling myself is actually not true about me, and I need to challenge that. And that can be really helpful. If you can change negativity when you are talking to yourself to more neutral language, that can really help as well. Obviously, we want it to be positive language you're telling yourself, but if the only step that you can take is taking it from negative language to a more neutral stance, then that can be really helpful in your journey towards stopping the negative self-talk. When your self-talk uses more gentle language, much of its negative power is muted and taken away, because if you can be more gentle to yourself and less critical, you are not being that critical part of that self. So what happens is you are more positive, and more positive talk about yourself is the best way to go and what we really want. If you think like a friend of yours, so think about how you would say something to a friend. If you're saying it to yourself and you wouldn't say it to a friend of yours who you care about and you love and you trust and you respect, why are you saying it to yourself? Why are you telling yourself you're not good enough? There's no point in trying, you're going to fail. Why are you saying that to yourself? You really need to think about where that comes from. And sometimes if we figure out where that comes from, we might need to get therapy and work on that. Or you could do some meditation on that, or those questions about where that comes from, where the negative self-talk comes from. Because once you know where it comes from, it's a lot easier to then handle it, and it's a lot easier to then do something about it. But sometimes it's harder if we don't know where it comes from. But if we can think about talking to a friend, and how would we talk to someone we love about what's going on for themselves, we really need to do that for ourselves. And that then taps into lack of self-acceptance and self-worth, and that's maybe something that you would need to start looking at. Shifting your perspective is the best way. Think about, will this matter to me in 5 years' time? Is this something that is really something I need to beat myself up about? And if it's not, then stop doing it. Also, what can be really helpful is when we talk to ourselves in a negative way, it's obviously very internal, but if we say out loud what we're saying to ourselves, it can be very interesting how that then feels, and it changes the perspective. It can give a lot of insight into what we're doing. So if you can say them out loud to someone you trust, say one of your best friends, you say to them, this is what I'm thinking about myself, this is how I feel about myself, or what I'm thinking I should do, or what I'm thinking about what I have done. It's very good to get it out in the open and say it out loud. If you can replace the bad thoughts about yourself with some good thoughts, that can be really helpful as well, and very healing. So what can be really helpful is if you talk to someone that you love, your partner, your children, your parents, your friends, if you can ask them to write down a couple of things that they love about you, a couple of things that they feel that they are proud of you for, or the reason that they would go to you if they needed help or needed support, that can be really helpful to have that written down. And it means that you can go to it and you can look at it, and not only is it in black and white, it's actually come from someone else. It's come from someone else saying, I love the way you speak to me, or I love the way that when I come to you for support, you don't judge me. I love how kind you are. that's very, very powerful because it's coming from someone else and it's not yourself. So you cannot criticize that comment. You cannot say that comment is not true, because actually it's coming from someone who knows and loves you, and that can be really helpful. So what I would suggest is, if you are really struggling with your negative self-talk and being critical, ask someone that you trust to tell you what they value about you, and then start telling yourself those things about yourself. So if you can switch your negative self-talk into neutrality and then switch it into something positive about yourself, that can make a massive difference. So if this video has helped, or you have any comments about what you do to quieten down your inner critic, or what messages you tell yourself, then please put it in the comments, and you never know who it's going to help. But thank you so much for listening to my video, and I'll see you in the next one.